What's going on? Back with another video. 2009 Cadillac Escalade. So backstory on this truck. For one, it has the all aluminum LS3 6.2. The backstory is I bought this truck. They told me it needed an engine. So the whole purpose of buying this truck was for the engine. So I bought it anyway, even though they said it needed an engine. But they wouldn't tell me what was wrong with the engine. So I got the truck. I tried to spin it over. It'll spin over probably maybe half a turn and then stop. So the first thing I did was get my breaker bar, put it on the crank, and I tried to rock it. You could spin the engine probably 80 degrees, 80, 90 degrees. Clockwise it'll stop, then probably 80, 90 degrees counterclockwise it will stop. So it was like locked up at a certain point. So the first thing I think is maybe stuck lifter, probably drop valve. Maybe piston was hitting the valve or hydro locked or whatever. So first thing I do is take all the spark plugs out the heads, still doing the same thing. I take the valve covers off of the heads and I loosen up all the rockers, take those out, still doing the same thing. I check all the valves. It didn't have a drop valve, which you can see from the top of the head. You can look at the top of the head once you take the rockers off. You can see if a valve is lower than the rest, or you can see if the springs have tension. You can check it that way. So another thing I did was I spent the engine over with the rockers kind of semi-loose to see if the push rods were going up and down. So once I did all that, without just turning the engine completely down, it still was doing the same thing. You could turn it that way, it'll stop. Then you could turn it this way, it'll stop. Basically, the piston was hitting something, or something in the bottom end was catching. So I pulled the heads off. Now this side was way dirtier than the other side. It was just dirtier, oilier, gunk. It had more gunk on it. So I already figured it was something going on this side. And poor maintenance. I don't know why people don't change their oil. That's like the easiest thing you can do to a car. So I pulled this side off. Everything looked good. And it's been sitting out here in the rain and the moisture and the humidity, so it has a little rust on the cylinder walls, a little surface rust. I'll probably come out here and put some oil inside the cylinder walls and on top of the piston. And when I build engines or I set engines up, some people use it, some people don't. I use transmission fluid. So if I have like an engine on a stand, every week or so, I get me like a rag and I dip it in transmission fluid and I soak the cylinder walls with transmission fluid just to prevent like the rust or corrosion or whatever, depending on the block. Whether it's aluminum or iron. So this is an aluminum block, so it has the sleeves in it, and for some reason sleeves rust faster to me, as opposed to if this was an iron block, it probably wouldn't be as rusty as it is. And people that aren't familiar with this engine, this is a 09 Escalade with the 6.2. So this is a DOD block, but this engine is non-DOD. So when they made these engines, they still use the DOD block. Some of them came with DOD in them and some of them came without it. This one had the block off plate on the top. You can look at the lifters. It still has the notch. It still has the DOD notch for the DOD lifter trays. but it just has regular LS3 lifters in it. It's not DOD, but it is automatic. It didn't come with DOD. The holes were blocked off. Now, if this was like a Tahoe or a Silverado, it wouldn't have a 6.2, but it would have like aluminum 5.3, and it would have DOD. And then some of the 6.2s came with DOD, some of them didn't. So, as I'm inspecting, once I get the heads off, take a look at that. Piston was trashed. Piston was trashed. So the piston was just sitting. It was just sitting in the hole. And once I got the heads off, I turned the motor one way, turned it the other way, and I could see that piston was not moving. So I automatically knew piston was busted. It was busted or broken or whatever. And then you could see like maybe a crack on top of the piston. No, I didn't see a crack on top of the piston. This is the piston. So you can see where it scored at the top. You can see where a valve hit, etc. Now this hole, this is how I got the piston out of the hole. I drilled the hole in, I couldn't get the piston out. So I drilled the hole in top of the piston because I already knew that it was completely like separated from the rod. So I drilled the hole in top of the piston and I threaded an alternator bracket bolt into the piston. While it was still in the engine, I drilled the hole, threaded the alternator bracket bolt inside because the piston's aluminum. That's where the shavings come from. And once I got that bolt threaded in there, I got me like some grip pliers and gripped onto it and just like a pull handle. Wobbled it around like that and pulled up on it like that until I got it out. Now you can see where it's broken, completely broke. The oil gland is broke. One of the piston rings is, you can see the piston ring is seized. The top piston ring is seized. So all the piston rings are there, but the top one is definitely seized. It's stuck in there. The rod is still in. All this still looks good. Wrist pin still good. That's just surface rust. Yeah, that's just surface rust. I didn't see it. I didn't see like a crack in the sleeve, anything like that, or any scoring. So 9 times out of 10, what I think happened to this engine, maybe a valve got stuck or was slow to come up. Maybe piston hit it, broke the valve guide, or the valve seat, broke the valve seat. The pieces of the valve seat fell into the cylinder. Piston came back up, hit those pieces, start scoring up the piston. Those are actually the pieces of the valve seat. And that looks like a mark from the actual valve itself. So I'm guessing valve was slow, hit the valve, broke the valve seat, Valve seat pieces got into the cylinder. They start banging around. Piston got hot. Piston cracked, broke, etc. And that was the fail of the engine. Which that's not a, to me, that's not a common fail with these LS engines. That's not something that happens all the time. Like, people usually don't pull the heads off and the piston is gone or etc. This is a completely stock engine in a completely stock truck. The truck has about 200,000 miles on it. Now I can tell that the piston rings were needing to be replaced. The coolant looked good. The oil looked good. It wasn't milky. Wasn't anything mixing. Wasn't a blowhead gasket. Truck wasn't running hot. I think it was just a lack of maintenance, oil changes, and I don't know. Maybe heads were due for a replacement or rebuild. Truck probably was smoking. The valve seals probably were bad, and they just kept driving it. Didn't change the oil. Probably was just topping the oil off. 9 times out of 10, the rear main seal is leaking. So there probably was a lack of oil at some point. When people blow these engines up, the first thing they do is top off the coolant and top off the oil every time. If you're buying a car and you see that it has, if you're buying a car that's not running and it has brand new oil in it, brand new oil filter, and brand new coolant, like fresh coolant that hasn't even circulated, like it's freshly poured in the reservoir, the oil is practically new, 9 times out of 10, that engine is blown. Every car I bought that's had brand new oil or brand new coolant in it has been trashed. It's either been ran hot or ran low on oil, engine's locked up. It's something going on with the engine every time. So I like to buy them with dirty oil, with the coolant right below the max or minimum, to where I know, okay, somebody was driving this car, the coolant's being used, the oil is being used. Like, this engine is 9 times out of 10 running or was running at some point. But when everything is new and the car is not running, that's a red flag. So 9 times out of 10, they blew the piston up, engine got locked up. First thing they do is pour a bunch of oil in the engine, brand new oil, and the first thing they do is top the coolant off, thinking that that's gonna save it, when it's too late. So you just wasted $100 in oil and coolant. Oh, well, it's just low. Nah, it probably was low, but it's too late. I've never poured oil in the engine and unlocked the motor. Never. Once a motor gets locked or a piston gets broken or a ring land breaks, it's over. Like you have to tear it down. You have to see what's going on, and you have to figure out what's actually the issue. But as you see, I was only able to pull out the top of the piston. As you look down, you guys probably can't see it, but the rest of the piston is in the oil pan. Now, they call me the king of the rig. They call me king of rigging. If this wasn't a 6.2, and this wasn't like an engine that I wanted, like the main reason why I bought the truck was for the engine, which I probably end up completely rebuilding the engine, machine shop, new pistons, rings, bearings, the whole 9 yards, and I probably end up swapping this, and I really want to rebuild this engine and swap it in the Blazer. But I have a Gen 453 it's in decent shape. It needs like typical like oil pump lifters, etc. I probably end up putting this in the Excalade, because I mean it's as far as like the truck is in good shape. The fact that the engine is blown lets me know that the transmission is probably good and everything else is probably good. It's probably blowing AC. So the truck is worth getting back on the road. It's not like I just want to pull the motor out and just trash the truck. I mean, the truck is in great shape. I probably end up just putting a 5.3 in here and riding it like that, and probably eventually selling it, and I just keep the 6.2. So this is giving like you guys idea. Now, since I am the king of rig, now I have done this. That wall doesn't look bad. It doesn't look like it's been scored. The piston rod looks good. I don't think it's bent. It doesn't look like it's bent or cracked or anything. Now, the main issue is the rest of that piston is in the oil pan. But with this being a 2-wheel drive, I have clear access to the oil pan, which I have done this. I can drop that oil pan. I can go get one piston. I can drop it. I'm not recommending anybody to do this, but I have done this and it's worked. And I mean, this could be like a vehicle that somebody has that they're just trying to get back running, get back on the road or whatever. Like they don't really care. Like this their personal vehicle. This isn't like a customer's car. This is my truck. I bought this truck. I own it. Whatever I do with it is this is my truck. So this isn't something I would do with like a customer. But I could drop that oil pan, clean it out, get the rest of that piston out, check out the bearings, check out the rods, and I could put one piston in here, one piston and rod with new rings, and I could slap some rebuilt heads on here, and this motor will probably crank up and ride. It'll probably crank up and ride. But keep in mind, I'm putting rebuilt heads. I'm probably going to put new lifters, rebuilt heads, and I'm going to clean all the metal out the oil pan and all the gunk. So I'll be putting new lifters, replacing the piston that's cracked or broken, replacing the rod, and replacing the head gasket. So I have new lifters, new head. The cam looked good, the push rods look good, but I probably could get away with just putting some heads, lifters, and replacing that piston and rod, and this motor probably will crank up and run and drive another 100,000 miles, 150,000 miles, who knows, whatever, 200,000 miles. It will probably last me more, because I'm going to keep the oil changed, I'm going to flush the engine, I'm going to pour a little diesel in it to clean it out, I'm going to do all the preventative stuff, I'm going to use injector treatment, I'm going to take care of the engine. I'm not going to hot dog it. I mean, this is Excalade, this isn't like a hot rod, this isn't like a Silverado. I probably wouldn't pull with it. I probably just daily drive it or travel in it. But with the engine being as bad as it is, I know the transmission is probably good. I know everything else is probably good. It just has a bad motor. So it's worth fixing. But that's just what was going on with this engine. So if you have like a locked up LS and it's turning one way and stopping and turning the other way and stopping, 9 times out of 10, a piston is hitting something. A piston is hitting something. And whatever happened with this engine, if whoever was driving it would have been aware, they probably could have saved the piston, maybe. I'm just speculating. Maybe they could have saved the piston, because I know they probably kept trying to crank the truck. So that piston kept hitting, because they probably were on the side of the road trying to get this truck back running. They probably poured a lot of oil and coolant in it, and they probably kept trying to crank it. Then they probably took it to a shop, trying to crank it, which in turn probably ended up just completely destroying the piston. But like I keep telling y'all, tear these engines down, look at them, see what you got. Don't automatically assume, oh man, it's just trash, it's done. It may be fixable. I could have took the heads off and the cylinder wall could have been scored up, cracked, busted. Who knows? And that's another reason why I like iron blocks, because you can bore them. Like how it has the surface rust and the piston got busted, you can bore the cylinder. These aluminum blocks have sleeves, and they're good for weight if you got a good one. They're kind of good if you got a good one, but they're not good if it needs work, because they get expensive with the machine work and sleeving and etc. And like it can get very expensive with aluminum block. Iron block, you can probably just bore it out, rehone it, and you're good to go. These blocks, you can't do it. So just keep in mind, everybody that's looking for aluminum 6.2 or 5.3 or whatever, you probably do better out going iron. Or if you're buying a truck, you'll probably be better out buying something with an iron block in it. Because 9 times out of 10, it won't be the extent of machine work that an aluminum block would need. Because aluminum blocks crack, all kinds of stuff. So we'll just see. I'll keep you guys updated.